So my first question for you, Sharon, is what is the single most beneficial perspective or insight that you obtained while enrolled as an undergraduate student at the University of South Florida? Similarly, when enrolled as a graduate student at Florida State University.
Okay, what is the single most important thing takeaway? I think for my undergraduate, maybe, I mean, definitely there was a lot of practical things. In terms of undergraduate, was more or less for me, my focus was like how to, and it kind of like opened up like my eyes to a lot of what was possible in the market in terms of being an artist. Because prior to that, I really just went to undergrad to learn how to paint. I was like, oh, I want to learn how to paint. You know, I want to learn how to use oils in this real way. So I wasn't really aware of the creative landscape and my place in the world and stuff like that. So I think undergrad showed me the possibilities, I think. And I think in terms of grad, definitely in graduate school, I think I started to look at myself as a serious artist and trying to look at my visual language and trying to sort of like find something authentic that was like, that kind of like was my voice. I think in undergrad, I recognized that I needed to find that, you know. And then after undergrad, I think there was a space where I was kind of like experimenting a lot. And then with graduate school definitely gave me that opportunity to experiment and to like really sort of like own the stuff that I was doing and understand the stuff that I was doing in a real practical way.
Did you walk into either situations with any assumptions that perhaps were challenged or disproven during your time there?
Yeah, I think definitely, and I think that's still the case because I know that I definitely have my ideas of what is art and stuff like that, and so I've had to learn and relearn. I remember in undergraduate, the things that I thought were the most exciting were like the least exciting to my visitors, my studio visitors. They were like looking at stuff that I was like, I don't know, you know. So it's made me undergrad made me like challenge, like question the way I look at things aesthetically. So that was something that was kind of like unexpected and part of it.
Wonderful. So you have a few bodies of work represented within your portfolio, all dealing with issues of identity and race. Though created using different mediums, your series used the curly line with weighted importance. How did you hone in on the ideas and issues that were personally important to you to explore through your work? And how did you develop your process for communicating these ideas and ideals?
Okay, normally, okay, I won't say that. I won't make a joke. Okay, well, I think my past in terms of, it's funny because I was thinking about this the other day, like how did it all come together in that way to sort of, and really it's been like, I think my whole practice has been like a series of exploration and surprises and stuff like that, with stuff that were already happening, you know, because I know prior to going to grad school and undergrad, grad in art, I worked like many years as a graphic designer. So that was my background, right? I was graphic designer. So I think when I went to undergrad, I really didn't have, like I said, I went to because I wanted to learn how to paint. And every time I discovered mediums, I just get really excited, you know, I just get really, really excited about the medium. So I think my focus on learning the how to, like, at the time I wasn't like paying attention to the conceptual ideas. I was just like really into like the you know, painting. Oh, I can do that. Oh, you know, drawing. Oh, sculpture. Oh, ceramic. Oh, printmaking. So I was like really like seduced by like a lot of the mediums. So for me, my conceptual ideas were like, I felt like that was like my weakest, and so I really struggled to try to find something that would center me in a real way that and that was hard. And I think it wasn't until after grad school, I think at the ending of undergrad, I was using clay in a real kind of intuitive way, and folks were like really responding to it in a way that they weren't responding to my paintings. And so that started giving me like a little bit of a direction. I was like, okay, you know, maybe I'll put a little bit more time into my ceramic kind of work, but at the same time I was still sort of like seduced by painting. So I wanted to find a way to sort of like merge the two, like in a way that was authentic. And I think at one point I think I just got real, it was a matter of frustration, being frustrated about the process and just being frustrated about, not really connecting with the work that I was making. And I think I had a aha moment where I decided to do still life. And I was, at the time I was thinking still life, and I was thinking self-representation, but I didn't want to do anything direct. I wanted to do some kind of abstracted thing that represented self. And I remember my hair falling, and there was conversations about that. And it made sense at the time just to draw this thing, to set up this simple still life and draw. And that was kind of, it was kind of lovely for me, because in one instance, it wasn't taking me this broad preparation, with ceramic, you make the work, you gotta wait for leather hard, then you gotta wait for it to be bone dry, then you gotta biscuit, fire it, it may break. So there's all this stuff before you can get this finished piece. And likewise with painting, you paint, you put on the first layer, first you maybe prime the canvas, first layer, second layer. And so the process. And so with the still life and with the drawing, I think I said to myself, no erasing, just drawing. And I'm going to draw the thing. I didn't know if it was going to translate in the way I wanted, but it was like kind of like trust the mark and all those kind of like things that you hear about when you talk about drawing. And so that was that was like, I think, a turning moment for me, because, I made these drawings and I was really excited about the drawings. And then I started showing the drawings, and folks started recognizing the marks in the drawing and giving them specific identity, like that mark, that is, mark hair in a comb, or hair, discarded, or hair. So that became like more exciting. And the more the work revealed and started giving back, it started like, even inspiring me more. And I think I'm still in that vein where I'm still working with those original marks. I'm still inspired by the line. And but I don't know if that answered the question, but that's kind of like how and it's funny because when I look back at my work, I feel like my work kind of like describes me, like the marks are, I feel like there's so much of who I am that's a part of the work, outside of, race and identity, so to speak.
So as you kind of looked at these areas that you wanted to explore, do you remember a single like aha moment where, hold on one second.
But you want a bone. Sweet.
My dogs are window watchers, so anytime someone walks by the window. But as you were exploring all of this, both in and it sounds like you found more your authentic voice in graduate school than necessarily undergraduate. But do you recall any aha moments that stand out to you where you felt like you really just kind of found your stride?
I know what the aha moment was, that I wasn't being pulled, right? So like the way I approach my mediums and such is, if I am I'll be working on ceramic, but then I get, I feel like, compelled, like, oh, I just, gotta put this away. I need to make a painting. I just need to. So that's how I kind of like let things happen, right? And so with this work, I find that I'm, continuously present and inspired by the work. So that became like with my aha moment, because prior to that, I'd make a painting, I was interested in the painting, but then after that, I was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? Whereas with this work, I feel like I've got so many ideas that I still, want to realize, and there's like more and more and more, right? So I think that became my aha moment in terms of, okay, I no longer have to feel like I have to be. But it's funny though, because I think a lot of the ideas in my work now were always present in my undergraduate work, but I hadn't made enough work yet, or I hadn't recognized, what those things were that I was interested in, that specific way.
So you had mentioned that you had a background in the commercial arts. Did you feel like coming to the world of fine arts with that skill set and that mindset was a strength because it was an additional tool within your toolbox? Or do you feel like it maybe constricted how you approached your work because you were approaching it with the mindset of a commercial artist?
No, yes and no. Well, because I think how because for me, I was a commercial artist, but I was a self-taught commercial artist, and I think in becoming a self-taught commercial artist, one of the things that I always got was like, Sharon, you have like a natural design sense, and so you were able to sort of, cross these hurdles. Whereas, if you didn't have this aesthetic eye, or if you didn't have this way of viewing work, I might have had, not had as much success so quickly as a in the graphic arts. So I didn't think that. And I think I recognize though that the folks who had very formal art background were much stronger, or they were able to, sort of develop their ideas a little bit quicker, or just, it was just a more maturity to their ideas, right? So I recognize that, and I wasn't quite sure if I'd go full, you know, creative visual arts. I think, I mean, I definitely thought, okay, well, after learning this could add to this. This could also, help strengthen what I was doing before. And then I completely lost it. but I definitely think though now, like when I'm having to document my work and color correct my images and lay out my website, and whether it's my cards, my business cards, or my postcards, so I think it's definitely helping me, in terms of being able to translate my marks into different mediums, in terms of whether I'm using the laser cutter, those are definite skills that I brought with me, and even in my video, like when I did the video, I think a lot of those skills are still, it's still there, in terms of how I make my work. I sometimes find I have to be definitely have to be very careful in terms of when I'm looking at the work to make sure that, the decisions I'm making are coming from a place that I want, and I'm not just being strictly formal about things.
Yeah, I would imagine that background in the commercial arts really does serve you quite well as you build your brand as an artist. Talking about your website, your cards, that's a really great point.
Yeah, documenting the work and knowing, what 300 DPIs mean when the curator says send me an image and 300 DPIs, and knowing, that make sure the image isn't too dark. So definitely there are like some behind the scenes things that help me, I feel like, to help, present my work in sort of in a way that represents my ideas and stuff.
So my next question for you is, as a follow-up, how do you stay authentic to those ideas and ideals that you value? And what are you willing to compromise on when working with an institution or a buyer? And what is a non-negotiable?
Right. Well, those are good questions. I think it's funny because I feel like I'm just learning about being an artist, and even though there's a lot of new things that come across my desk, and a lot of new unexpected situations that comes across, and I'm definitely learning how to slow down and how to really read things and look at things, and look at what my time is, and valuing my time, and stuff like that. Fortunately, I haven't had very many situations where I feel compromised, or I feel like I'm compromising my ideas. I'm generally pretty open about, in terms of speaking to people about, what I can do and what I can't do, kind of thing. I think when I was in grad school, I think I had some opportunities come by, maybe that I didn't navigate it in the best way, because I was just trying to, do academia and art world. And it was just sometimes it was just difficult to sort of negotiate things like that. But, I mean, now, luckily, I mean, I'm hoping, I try to get mentors and folks that I can call on and talk to in terms of decisions and stuff. I think in terms of not compromising, for me, as someone who left a career in, relatively successful career to do something else, to be an artist, there's not very much that I will compromise. I definitely won't compromise my work and my ideas and stuff like that. But I'm also always open to learn and stuff. So sometimes I'll do stuff I'll work with a curator or somebody, and I'll trust them to do stuff. And depending on what happens, you know, I mean, I'm learning, you know, I'm learning, okay, maybe speak up at that, you know, or maybe, you know, it's okay to, you know, to not sweat the small stuff and stuff like that. So it's all a work in progress, and I think I'm learning, you know, I don't think I have any hard fast.
And I would say that that's probably one of the major juxtapositions between the world of commercial arts versus fine arts, where commercial art, it really is about executing the vision of a client, where in
Right.
fine arts, it's really about how do you execute work that's authentic to you, that speaks to your inner self.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been like, I've been learning a lot in terms of like just trusting my instincts. It's funny that you say that, because I think the biggest risk I took for myself was when I was creating the works on porcelain. I've got two here. When I was creating this works on porcelain, seriously, I had no idea how I would even present this. And I was like, you know, I know I just had an idea. And I was like, you know, oh, it was just so beautiful to see. And I was working with found object, and I had no idea of whether or not that was folks would even consider that, you know, is it art, is it craft, like what is it? Is it ceramic, is it whatever? And like just like even like just not even like just clearing the table of that, and like just sort of like saying, okay, whatever, you know, I'm just going to do this because this is what I want to do, and then doing that and putting it out in the world. And I think it took me a while even to know how to present these works. Like, am I going to put it on a pedestal and I put it, you know, so that was one of the things that I'm learning in terms of like not like my ideas, like in not compromising my ideas and not standing in my way, you know, not standing in my own way too, because I've got all these sort of preconceived ideas and expectations about how things are supposed to be.
And it seems like you're at this point in your career where you're obviously a rising voice, and I think that with that comes sometimes an influx of opportunities. And I think one of the most challenging things for an artist is weighing what opportunities to say yes to and what to say no to. I often tell artists everything you say yes to, you're inevitably saying no to something else because there's only
Oh,
a
good
finite amount
thing.
of
Yeah,
time. So,
right.
so what are you? I know you talked about the role of mentors, but I guess have you defined goals for yourself that you say yes to the things that get you closer to those goals, or how do you determine what to say yes to and what to say no to?
Well, I think I'm in a really interesting space right now, like inward and then outwards. Because for me, you know, I feel like I, you know, definitely the momentum. Like when I first started doing residencies, you know, they were like, you know, works exchanges and stuff like that, or you know, like stuff that. So now I feel like I'm at a space where, you know, maybe opportunities are being presented to me. So it's like a different feeling. It's a different opportunity. It's like, oh wow, you know, that those things exist, you know. So it's like I'm at the doorstep. So there, like although there are a lot of opportunities, they're not getting in the way so much that I'm like having to like sort of be real picky and say, oh, my schedule is completely full of all these volunteer opportunities, and now the big guns are coming, and what am I going to do? So I'm not really there yet, although I'm beginning to like sense that I can hear a little bit of a hum. So the train seems like it's coming, Patrick, but I'm not quite sure yet. So I think for now, what I've been doing is I'm trying to make sure I have time for work, making the work. I have time for like writing about the work and documenting the work and all those things. And I'm definitely learning that, you know, when you say yes to something, it's easy to say yes, but then, you know, that means you're also saying yes to like, you know, maybe 3 hours of work in terms of like on the back end, having to get things together and, you know, you send stuff, you know, so it's taking 3 hours out of other spaces and stuff like that. So I'm trying to be smart about that, like figuring out, you know, how to best push my energies, you know. And of course, you know, I want to work collaboratively with other artists. So, you know, how do I navigate that stuff? And it's all really new. So I don't really know if I have an answer. It's like, it's all really new. So whenever, if an opportunity comes my way and I'm not sure if I'm being exploited or if this is a really good, I may call someone and say, hey, this is happening. I got this opportunity and this is what's being offered, blah, 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 blah. What do you think of that? Is that normal? Is that something, you know? And then they'll say, you know, they'll give me their opinion. You know, they'll say, oh, you know, yes or no, or this is standard, or this isn't. So then I know how to navigate it.
With some artists and creatives, when they're starting to embark on a new project or a new body of work, I think there's this high degree of excitement because you're stepping into territory that might be new and unknown. And I think that that's part of the fun of the process of making. And I think that sometimes after you, let's say, are like 3/4 of the way through the project and you're into that final stretch, it seems like maybe some artists don't always approach the finishing of a project
Yeah.
or body of work with as much speed and tenacity as they started. And I'm wondering if that has to do with like this idea of like almost like postpartum separation,
Yeah. Like
and
after.
like knowing that you're soon going to have to let go of this thing, which means it goes out into the world, and that can be a scary thing. So how do you handle the start of a project or body of work versus the completion of a project or body of work, and what does that take, like what toll does that take on you, not just creatively but also emotionally?
That's interesting because I feel like my work, the way I work, the work is always ongoing. It's continual. Although definitely there are. I don't feel like my work is ever finished like that. You know, because I feel like it's made out of there are these different objects and pieces that come together to make the story. So like when I was working on like these pieces, this I think I just transitioned to something. This is like my spin series where I did the white porcelain um, with the white hair, and then but by the time this was finished, I was already moving towards something else. So I don't think I ever have that. Like I think I approach my work quite differently. I know at times, like there are times where I have like an idea, and I was like, okay, I'm the body of work. I'm gonna make a body of work about this specific idea. Um, and I know I want to realize it, you know, over, you know, these certain objects, and I'll go from beginning to end. But I think because where I am in my practice, I haven't really had like a lot of that because, you know, I was in graduate school, and so you're experimenting a lot, and then you for your thesis, you know, you come together with the body of work. But I'm always like working on different things, you know, like right now I've got embroidery going, and I've got, you know, some drawings going, and I've got, you know, some ceramic work that I'm working on, and then I've got an installation going. So I'm always like moving between things, and so it depends on what I have happening. So if I have an exhibition happening, then I'll know, okay, I need to get, you know, these pieces together. And then I've got so much, I make a lot of work. And I've got so much work, so I don't think knock on wood, I haven't really gotten to that spot yet. I do get to the spot depression after the exhibition. After the exhibition, that's when I get like this like depression because there's like all this frenzy before, and then, you know, then afterwards it's kind of like, you know, okay, who am I again? But with the work, not usually, because I usually have so much to do. I think my biggest struggle in my studio is like focusing, saying, Sharon, get on this project and finish this project and stay on it no matter what, you know. That's more my biggest challenge. Otherwise I'm working in between projects.
So building off of that, how do you define success, or how do you measure success in your work and your
In
career?
my practice, I think I would I know it's so funny because I don't really. It's funny because I don't really think that, and I think maybe it's because of where I am in terms of success. I mean, I think for me, success for me has always been being able to do what I want to do. You know, being able to, you know, just make. I mean, if I'm able to make my work and make a living off my work and be able to have my studio practice, to me, that's success. You know, that's, and maybe the bar seems low, but to me, that's like, you know, would be just incredible to be able to just, you know, make a living off my work and talk to great curators and art, you know, enthusiasts and professionals about my art, and to have people like being interested in what I'm doing, and, you know, getting the work. I don't know if that's like, but that's to me success, you know, and for me to be inspired by the work, and I mean, right now I feel like I'm present. I'm not, you know, I don't have creative block. So that's like success to me.
You were born in Jamaica, raised in Canada, and now live in the United States. What qualifiers do you apply to yourself as an artist, such as Jamaican born or Savannah based, or even Black artist? And do you think that qualifiers that artists apply to themselves, especially such terms as local, are beneficial or prohibitive?
Right. So I see all of those things as like intersections, you know, of me. And so I feel like everybody has their own intersections, you know. And so I feel like it adds to like my to the work to the work I make, is definitely the work I make is different. Is the way it is because of my experience, because I had a Canadian experience, because I had a Jamaican experience, because I have a Southern experience. My Southern experience is definitely different than a native Southern experience, somebody who grew up in the South. So I think those things are really important, and maybe in terms of having those experiences, maybe it allows me to amplify my voice in a way that resonates with more people, like people from all those areas maybe can see value in the work I make. Yeah, so I'm always trying to reach out. I'm definitely always, trying to say, okay, especially because I was in Florida for a while, and so I felt like, I feel like even Florida is a part of my history, and so, I think there's an audience for me there in Florida because I understand that, a little bit of the landscape there, and that does sort of articulate itself in my work. And in terms of like when I was at USF, it's so funny. When I was at USF, I remember Ollinger told us, that when you're making work in terms of like putting your work in the world, like I definitely feel that there is work to be done locally, there's work to be done regionally, there's work to be done nationally, and there's also work to be done internationally, right? Because we all have those intersections. And so for me, I try to place my work in those spaces, and especially, Patrick, because I'm here in Savannah, and then I was in Tallahassee, right? And like some people don't even know where Tallahassee is, right? So it becomes even more important, like for you to like be able to like not get boxed into like this space, and be able to sort of like cross borders, even timelines, with your work. And so those are the things that I kind of like try to do with my work.
It seems like artists that are at your level as far as a career is concerned, which is really just, like I said, that rising voice. You're starting to get out to a much broader audience. You're being recognized for your work. It seems like sometimes there's this belief that you have to relocate to a major art market like Miami, New York, or Los Angeles, or even Toronto, in order to be, I think, successful in
Successful.
elevating to the next level of the career.
Right.
Savannah is a really interesting location, though, because it does have a strong arts market because of SCAD being located there. What has been your determining factors of living in cities like Tallahassee? Obviously, that was education based, but even Savannah
I think.
versus relocating to a market.
Yeah, I think for me, I definitely try not to let the place that I live at um, kind of influence. I said like there are days definitely that I look at the landscape and I thought, wow, if I was in Miami or if I was in New York or if I was, but the reality is I'm not really attracted to living in those places, and for me, like it becomes the quality of life for me in terms of where I want to be. But one of the more important, and I'm pretty nomadic, I think, in terms of my ideas and my lifestyle. But for me, what's most important is having a place to work. And one of the things I liked about Tallahassee and equally about Savannah is that the place that my studios are great. I can have a place to work comfortably, and there's a different energy. There's a totally different energy in terms of like when I'm in Toronto. When I'm in Toronto, it's a different. And I love going to Toronto and stuff. But for me, living in places like Tallahassee and Savannah allows me to go to places like Toronto and Miami and New York and just do my little whirlwind thing for a weekend or day or two or a week or whatever, and then I can come back to the quiet, predictable, mundane kind of space where I can breathe. And I think for me though, I think what's more important, like when I'm looking at locale, I'm thinking, okay, Sharon, is there a major airport? Like, yes, there is. Okay, I'm good. Or how far is the major airport? Like, I can get to New York, I think, in like 2 hours, like from here, like on a. So it's not so far away. And then of course, I feel like we live inside. Even when I'm in Toronto and I'm there for a while, I don't see my friends. They're all in, especially with winter. So nobody really even knows where you are, really. So I think. You can make it a handicap, or you can like, you can try and sort of like, I try not to. I try to like, in spite of being here, I still try to maintain relationship, whether it's like I said in 6-hour time zones or or if it's like other places. I think it's possible, especially with the internet.
Yeah, we've been trying to work the last couple of years of really shifting that deficit mindset to an asset-based mindset because I think Erie is very similar in the sense that cost of living is very affordable, studio space is accessible. Not only do we have, rail, roadway, waterway, and air transportation, but we're also only an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Buffalo, halfway between Chicago and New York, only a few hours from Toronto. So that's one of the things that I try to challenge around that qualifier of local artist is you can live locally, but with things like the internet, really you should be looking at how do you position
By your voice, right?
the larger conversation. Yeah.
And I think for me that was like became like important really early because as a person of color, I'm making work, especially undergrad and graduate. There was a lot of if I wanted my work to be seen, like most of the students I was in school with, they weren't making work like mine. So when they were putting together shows, they weren't thinking about my work in their shows. So if I didn't start reaching out and branching out and finding spaces that were interested in my work and trying to figure out, okay, how can I what are my intersections and how can I sort of amplify those in a way that people can be interested in the work, my work would never have been seen. I wouldn't have those experiences of showing and exhibiting the work. So definitely, I think, if you think local, and it's funny too, because folks don't give the local market enough credit, but local markets are great, like even though it's not New York, you can, they're still important, I think.
Absolutely, especially I think when you're trying to develop yourself, especially as an emerging artist, that emerging to mid-career time frame. I think your local and regional markets are what sustain you.
Mhm.
So, on to the next question: what patterns, routines, or habits do you integrate into your studio practice?
Well, I try to be present every day in my studio. That's for sure. Um, I think right now. I'm pretty much making. So I've got like different. I don't even know. I feel like. So I moved to Savannah, and so I think when I first moved here, I don't think my first thing was, okay, how do I get a studio? And at first I didn't really have a studio, so I was doing more or less embroidery. And then it became, okay, get a studio. And so I'm like, okay, I've got a space that's dedicated for a studio. But again, it's not the ideal studio. So it's now, okay, how do I make the studio into a space that can work for me? So I think I'm in that space where I'm like, where I'm making the space work for me. Um, I think in terms of rules, I think pretty much like I try to just be present and just make work, and I try not to shoot myself in the foot, not to be my own worst kind of like not to stand in my own way. Like I try to do the thing that I need to do. Like there's a lot of stuff I hate doing, like filling out applications, and so a lot of times I have to give myself treats and stuff like that and bribes. Maybe carve out special kind of, I say, oh, tonight I'm going to be able to do this. Maybe I'll watch a movie while I'm, editing my photo. That should be, so I try to like, incorporate like these different strategies to get me to do the things I need to do for my practice. So that's what I've been doing. And of course, I've got like, I see folks doing much better, and I have goals in terms of how I need to and try, I need to like, there are things that I'm not very good at. I need to like rework them and stuff like that. So I'm always constantly going. And I don't think I have all the answers. I'm definitely like, trying things and looking at other artists doing really brilliant things and trying to see, if maybe I can learn from the way they're doing things and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a work in progress.
So you talked about building those rewards in. Probably the most important question I'm going to ask you: what are your go-to studio snacks?
Oh my God. I'm a tea person. Well, lately I've been having a lot of ice cream, lots and COVID. My COVID diet has gotten a lot more sweeter. And so there's like lots of sugar snacks. It's funny because if you actually come to my studio and give me a studio visit, I usually have a spread. I really have a spread. I usually have a little bit of cocktail, something sweet, something salty, something alcoholic. So if you're going to visit me in the studio, make sure that it's like close to the time that you're supposed to be getting off work. Teas. But yeah, I mean, I try not to eat too much in my studio because I'm just so messy. I get really scared of bugs, so I try not to do that.
Yeah, I feel like that's something you have to be concerned more with in the South. Palmetto bugs and everything down there.
Yeah, yeah. So usually you'll catch me like doing tea. Tea is like the most that I do in the studio.
So real quick to build off of something that you had mentioned in a previous answer, you had talked about looking to other artists for inspiration. Who are some artists right now that are, either a reference point for you as far as like you feel like they're knocking it out of the park, or somebody that gives you hope?
Well, definitely there's a lot of really good artists that I'm really inspired by that I would love to collect. um, 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 and then of course there's a lot of hair artists that I really admire their work, and because I feel like they're pushing, they're pushing these different ideas and sort of like being um, like just trying, just really sort of pushing their work. And to be honest, it's really funny. I try, like if I really like an artist's work, I really try not to look at them. I really do, because I'm like really, because I'm on the internet so much. And in terms of looking at the landscape, I'm always like critical, because I'm a big believer that, and I tell my students this, that, that you really have to push through your ideas, and like, yeah, if you see things out there in the world that inspires you, look at it, have a conversation with it, but, try and see if you can push your work in terms of, what, I mean, you don't want to, at least I try not to be saying the same thing. I want to, if I'm saying that, I need to be saying it in a different way, or or adding something to the conversation, as opposed to like just taking things, because otherwise it can become too formulaic. And as a graphic designer, I know that, things can be formulaic. Like if you want to put together an aesthetic that work, there are certain things that you can put in the salad that, boom, wow, that's pretty. So I try not to do that. I try to really sort of like, if I see things that I'm looking and I feel really inspired, and there are artists that I look at their work and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And then I start getting like that tingly feeling. I was like, okay, I got to stop looking, because I recognize, why maybe I'm looking at those and why I'm like liking them. And I don't want those ideas to find their ways into my work in a very sort of direct way. So I will try not to. I try not to look. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I've had conversations with folks who are like, well, why wouldn't you look? And for me, I feel like I'm always trying to push myself in a way that I'm trying to have an authentic voice. And I know that not every, that there's a lot of, it's hard to have that, and nothing been done before, but I really try to do that, and I feel like that stands in the way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned like a formulaic approach to creation, because I think we tend to think about that a lot in the performing arts, specifically around pop music, how like that's all very formulaic, right? Like the
Right.
it is, the tempo that it is, there is a recipe that is being followed to guarantee a success. And I think people don't often think about that same, formulaic success in visual arts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. I mean, like if I wanted to, you could comb the landscape, and I mean, there's certain things that have worked, that works. That you can maybe bore those things and put it together. But I try not to do that. I try not to work like that. I mean, I definitely believe that there's certain aesthetic concept, consideration that you can sort of like take into account when you're creating the work that can give it certain energy and feel and blah, blah, blah. But I try to sort of engage those things in a way that makes sense to the work I'm making, and isn't just about following trends, like especially with my work, I'm always trying to be very mindful, and maybe it falls into a certain conversation, but I'm always trying to be mindful that I'm not speaking to a specific trend, and that my work is that, so that I can continue being inspired.
So, what have you learned about yourself through your career as an artist?
Always learning about myself. I'm well, I think what have I learned about myself? I guess I approach life like I'm a Libra, so I'm always introspective. I'm always this balance of the scale. So it's always this continuing thing. I think for myself, I feel like I need to like, maybe push myself more, and maybe like sometimes not set up these comfortable situations for myself to work. So I'm always constantly trying to see if I can shake things up and sort of like become uncomfortable, so that I'm pushing innovative work, you know. So that's one of the things that I'm constantly trying to maybe learn, is just try to shake things up for myself, so that I'm not, and maybe that's the same thing, maybe that formulaic thing, so that I'm not working in like this comfort zone and like, you know, okay, I got this, you know, kind of thing. But and I mean, that goes in terms of like, yeah. And I'm learning that I'm brave, that I take chances, because there's a lot of stuff that I do, and folks are like, you do that? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Like, you wouldn't. So I'm learning like a little bit about that with myself.
So I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to pull up some images from your website, and if maybe you can talk about some of that work. Are you able to see your?
Yes, I do
So
perfectly.
let's first take a look at some of your embroidery work. What can you tell us about this series?
That I call that series Polite Conversation. I think that's an ongoing series. And I think I've got a few pieces in that series, and this is like maybe the largest installation. And for that one, it's interesting. I think I started creating that one after grad school, like in 2018. And again, I think the transition, I was in Florida, and I think at the time we were living between Florida and California, and I just didn't have a studio, but I wanted to work. And at the time, I think I was thinking about the mark, you know, the line, and the more I kept making these drawings, sometimes there's this muscle memory, and there's this kind of like way that I make these marks, and I think in terms of writing was like reminded me also of this unique gesture. So I was thinking about the lines, mark, this unique gesture, and then I was also thinking about painting with that work too. And I was thinking about like just this feeling I was feeling at the time where, of course, there was like this heightened political, this racial tension, and all this stuff that you'd be seeing online, and these just very sort of like horrible thing that was being like just voiced. And I know that sentiment was like, it was just a way for me just to like maybe like process a lot of that stuff, and like maybe scream, maybe it was a silent scream is what it was. But it was nice to be able to like not have a place to work, be able to be out in the public. And I remember being out in a park doing this embroidery, and I must have looked like really sort of domestic. And so, this lady was walking by, and she had her little girl, and she was like, "Oh, hi!" And she was like really attracted to the embroidery, and she was like, "Oh, what are you embroidering?" And she was coming closer, and then she's getting closer with the kid. I was like, "No, no!" And then she came closer, and she saw what I was embroidering, these million little F. But I remember that work was like really like timely, and it was just like maybe a silent protest, and it was like, just satisfied a lot of needs. I need to make work, and I remember building up the density of the work, and like seeing it as a painting, and thinking, okay, I need more marks there. So that was that work. And it's and one of the things I liked about that work too, Patrick, that it's funny because it used my my interest in the line and the unique gesture, but it also spoke to like found objects and found material, and sort of like taking these this precious thing. I don't know if it might have been a blanket, or it might have been a child. So it was kind of like it kind of like merged all those interests to me, that in a way that made sense.
And what about this in series, Entanglements?
Entanglement. So this is a really exciting series, and it's like more or less the latest installation of the work that I'm making. And this work, I think for me, it speaks. I'm excited about it because it's like when I first started making the line, the mark, the line, drawing it. And I was thinking of it as hair, and I was thinking, okay, maybe some people would see it as threads. So I remember I was pairing it with these signifiers, and I was using bobby pins with it so that people would like anchor it in the space of hair. And then, I transitioned to like removing the bobby pin, but people were still referencing it as hair. And then I started to doing them in the round, into sort of like these black, into these black figures. And I think people, even though they were removed, they were still being referenced as hair. And so these pieces to me are like marry these ceramic pieces too. So it's like it references hair, it references these like sort of precious thing, and so it's abstracting I feel like it's kind of like abstracting the abstracted. So even though I'm not presenting this, I'm not presenting that, I feel like it still speaks to this. So it's kind of like real exciting to me, like in terms of the evolution of the work. And I think it also speaks even to so it's like me thinking about this conversation, but like broadening it or bringing it into like a different space. So now those delicate marks or those ornate things are 3D, so that's what I'm thinking about.
And what was with the Hair Matters series? What was the preface for that series?
Okay, so the Hair Matters series, the digital collages. Okay, I think it's a digital collage. Is it digital collage that my Hair Matters?
Hair Matters is what I have pulled up right now.
Okay, so those ones, I think, so when I first started, I had a very minimal palette, and I was doing like very black and white, and I was doing, because the black and white was very, it made sense, it was a metaphor, and I was like, I feel like I was in the very sort of beginning stage of having these conversations. And then I was thinking, but I wanted to add color too. So that was something. So I wanted to add color. And at the time I was like, okay, I want to think in terms of this very sort of formal way about color in the work, but I wasn't interested in like choosing color, because I was like, maybe too heady about, okay, well, what does these colors mean? And blah, blah, blah. So then I started thinking about maybe found color that, and of course, with these things, I'm definitely very interested in like these feminine things, and these like the language in terms of beauty and pretty, and wanting to like incorporate those conversations with the hair, because black hair, of course, is normally like associated with those things in terms of pretty and beautiful and stuff like that. So that was a way for me to like to marry those types of conversation. And so, I think it's funny. It was funny because I think we were out thrifting, and my husband saw this work, and he was, or one of the, and he's like, "Oh, honey, look at this." And I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what I've been looking for in terms of being able to transition the marks." And at first, when I started doing this, I wasn't quite sure, because I think initially I was thinking the white would work better because it's very simple, and it wouldn't really conflict, kind of like be busy on the surface. So I wasn't sure how it would translate, but it did. It translated, what I was trying to say. And it's funny because I think these also look like my digital collages in terms of like, the figures with the, like those ones. Like I feel like these are like similar conversation. And like with those ones, again, I was using the found images and sort of like using the mark and to marry them with the mark to see if how they engage with those. But I think definitely with the work, it's like I'm like approaching it like a certain sentiment or a certain conversation. Maybe it's about seeing, maybe it's about being looked at, maybe it's about challenging our expectations to certain, our ownerships towards certain aesthetics that we see,
So I noticed that with both the pottery form that you are working within, as well as some of the found images you use within your digital collages, there's what I'll refer to as kind of the colonial time periods.
Right.
And is your work a direct commentary on the erasure of Black figures and bodies from that work, and the fact that there was Blackness presence during those time periods?
I definitely think that's part of the conversation. I don't know if you can see in the back of my studio, I've got like a painting I did in the undergrad myself as a lady with a pearl earring, and so I definitely, I feel like there's certainly a natural attraction to those that kind of time frame, because everything that I reach for tend to have some kind of connection to those kinds of aesthetic, that aesthetic like 1840s. And so it's something that I'm more, I grow more and more aware of, the Venetian palette. And I think maybe a lot of it also has to do with, yeah, like when I first started, I definitely wanted to see, I wanted to sort of put myself in those places to see, how, what was my, because of erasure. Yeah, you're right. Because of erasure, like wanting to recognize that, Black bodies existed in those spaces in those times, in a very sort of like, in not the way that, like, when I read stories and I'm trying to place myself in those stories, like I wanted to like really sort of interrogate those in a way that made other people also uncomfortable about those spaces being void of people of color,
Yeah, it's so my background, I never went to school for the arts, so art history is something that's way over my head. But, obviously, especially around like when the Black Panther films came out, there was a renewed conversation around Afrofuturism and around and that obviously had been around for quite a while. If you look at the music of like Parliament and George Clinton, which is very much saying the future includes Black people. And I
Right.
think that what the work that you're doing in these digital collages and the porcelain is almost the bookend to that, which is the past also includes Black people.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Do
I
you
would,
find that you're being drawn to this imagery is influenced by your presence in the American South?
yeah, I think it definitely gives me a little bit more access. Yeah, I think that also, and I also think maybe perhaps Jamaica, the British colony, so there's a lot of these subconscious kind of systems that are in place that you're always being brushed up against. So I think it's like I think it's there for me. Like I think I would have to like unpack it not being there, um, and so it becomes this thing that I'm always, and that seems around. And yeah, being in the South, yeah, definitely is. I think if I had spent more time in up north, like when we emigrated to Canada, maybe if I'd spend more time up north, maybe perhaps although maybe not, or maybe they would manifest in a different way. But I think definitely being in the South, that especially being in Savannah, which has got so much history, a lot of that old history is like still is very present that you can reach out and touch. Has made is kind of like shaping the work in a very sort of um, definitive kind of way.
So with all of these conversations around your portfolio, how do you see your work existing in 2020 versus how it may have existed in the world in 2016 and how folks engaged with it in 2016, or let's say even pre the 2016 election? Everything that we've
Oh,
experienced
yeah.
maybe
Ooh.
the last 4 years, how has that influenced how people perceive and engage and interpret your work?
I think in a way, I think the work is kind of timely in the sense that like in undergraduate, I think maybe there was a beginning of a buzz that maybe perhaps in terms of the national consciousness, and as time is going by, so I feel like my work has evolved because I remember when I first started going for my undergraduate, Obama was running for election, and so I like really, he still had black hair, he didn't have anything right here, and he still had that mole that nobody remembers that he had, I think. So I think that was like the beginning of my career. I think my practice slowly like maybe has kind of like grown from there. So it's like I've steadfastly been getting the support that maybe reflects the times, Um, so it's been like a natural progression for me. So I haven't like, it's not like I was existing like for a long space without support or without people people really got my work early, which is really kind of cool. Like I had people like coming to me and saying, "Oh, Sharon," and I have someone in my studio and they could talk about my work in the way that I was like, "Yes, yes, yes." That's exactly what I'm trying to say in the work. So that's been really lovely. I mean, it's funny because I think lately I'm having to speak more, use my own voice in talking about the work, whereas before the work was really speaking on its own, where I can show the work and not really say much. People like really get the work and they, in their commentaries, all the things that I would say about the work, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And I think that that leads way into maybe my final question for you this afternoon, which is, in your own words, what do you want to accomplish while here in Erie, as far as not just within the studio, but learning, access to information, etc.?
Well, that's a good question, and I know I was speaking to the young lady from the Play Center,
Play space, yeah.
Play Space. I forgot her name. Her name slips me just now, but I remember. I know she was speaking. We were speaking. We were talking about some of the history, the forgotten history of or unspoken history of Erie, and it'd be really interesting for me to like to connect with that in a real way, like to maybe dig through some of the archives and to really sort of like have that sort of inspire some of the work that I do there. Like I really want to do that. I'd love to be able to like, and everything's closed down now, so I know I'm gonna or partial. I know I'm gonna have to be real careful in terms of navigating those spaces, but just really, and definitely I'd love to be able to do maybe some Zoom calls because I'm interested in definitely meeting some of the local artists and stuff and seeing some of the work that's being produced there. I'm excited to like just because I've got my own ideas of what I want to work on, but I don't want to be so like this. Like I'm leaving it so that other stuff can come in, that can sort of like help sort of define the work in sort of a way that's sort of specific to my experience up there. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. I have a few ideas, but I don't want to have too concrete ideas because I think I have to like be prepared for the unexpected, and being able to sort of learn and sort of like just explore and sort of like get some information. Because I know that one of the stuff I was doing before Patrick was about Erie that was really interesting to me was like it's about port cities and port cities having like being a site for interrogation, and so much happened in those cities, and like what are the long term sort of like impressions, like what are the goals, what are the echoes that are left behind, because I think Erie for me is like it's always interesting to me about like in a space where so much resistance was happening, in terms of like it being like the last space, in terms of my understanding of folks going up to Canada and different places, like how how is that echoed in the community, or is that still evident in the community, you know what I mean? So that'd be really interesting for me to like to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what we're raised to believe as youth in school, and being that we were a stop on the Underground Railroad, and being that we're north of the Mason-Dixon line, I think that you're raised to believe that we were on the side of right.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that Pennsylvania was only a partial abolition state, which meant that you know individuals that were searching for their freedom, if they were captured in Pennsylvania, they could be sent back to the South.
Right.
So even though the Underground Railroad went through here, we did have many that still considered further migration north up to the New England states, which was full abolishment, or Canada. I think the other thing that really intrigues me about you being here in 2020 and now are conversations that we're seeing around the suffrage movement and the 100-year anniversary of women's rights to vote. But truth be told, there's no asterisk beside that, being that it's white women's right to vote.
Right.
There was still another, I think, 40 plus years before women of color have the right to vote. And I think that we're seeing a lot of celebration around the 100-year anniversary, but I don't think that full narrative is being told. but I think that now, especially in the wakes of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything we've been seeing across the nation over the last few months, I think that these narratives are becoming more important, and the dialogue and conversations are becoming more and more important. So because of the fact that a lot of your work takes this historic imagery and kind of European classical forms and reminds folks that Black women were still present in those times, I think is an increasingly important narrative for everything that's revolving around the suffrage movement right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So that would be, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of meat. I feel like there's so much. That's why I get so overwhelmed, you know, because there's just so much stuff to make. And that's why I have to work in all these different mediums, because some ideas, you just want to get it out. And you're like, okay, if I do it, it's going to take forever. The conversation's going to be done by the time you. So I think, yeah, I'm excited. And thank you. I want to thank both you and, Erin for, creating this opportunity. It's really important that there's folks like you out there in the world making space for artists.
Well, we're certainly excited that you accepted our offer, and we're looking forward to having you here in just a week and some odd days time period.
Yeah,
So
exciting.
thank you so much for being so gracious with your time and sharing so much about yourself and your practice this afternoon.
Thank you.